Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another Backlog cleared video. Today's backlog that I have cleared is second run Blu-rays that I have. I only have 11 titles. Hopefully I will be getting more at some point, because if you want strange European cinema of the 60s, 70s and 80s, sometimes earlier, sometimes later, second run are really good in this regard. They always have little booklets and really nice extras. I do have a bunch of second run DVDs that are still firmly ensconced in my backlog. I got a bunch of them off eBay the past couple of years, so it's probably going to take me a wee while to get through the second run DVDs, but I have cleared the backlog, the second run Blu-rays, some of which I've done random reviews of pretty recently as I've cleared them, so you can go check those random reviews out. I'm not going to go into too much detail with them, pretty much just show you what I've actually cleared. So the first one is A Case for Rookie Hangman by Pavel Juracek. Again, the pronunciations of these Czech and Hungarian names are probably going to be terrible, and I apologise. This one is a 4K restoration. It has a short feature from 1963 called Joseph Killian, two shorts by Juracek, Cars Without a Home from 1959 for 7 minutes, and Black and White Silva from 1961, 29 minutes, and it has the 2017 Projection Booth podcast, co-hosted by Mike White, Kat Ellinger, Kevin Hefferman, Peter Hames. This is a film from Czechoslovakia in 1969. Juracek co-wrote Daisy's I Carry XB1 and A Jester's Tale, but never directed a film after this. I should say all of these second run Blu-rays are multi-region, I believe. Excuse me. This one is strange. I'd say that probably about most of these 11. It's a cross between Alice in Wonderland. The lead character is driving through the country, takes a road, ends up getting in a wreck, ends up running over a hare who's dressed in clothes. So it's a cross between Alice in Wonderland, it's a cross between Gulliver's Travels, and it's very Kafka heavy as well. It will remind you of Orson Welles' version of The Trial. It's a heady mix of surrealism, there's some amazing scenes in it, but overall it doesn't quite hang together. It's still very good, but it's a little frustrating at times, but it's still well worth checking out if you're fans of the three kind of works that I mentioned. The print's lovely, it's a great black and white cinematography, but it perhaps doesn't quite hang together as well, but it's certainly an interesting film and very pleased to have it in the collection. Next is The Cremator, which I recently did a random review on, I think yesterday, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's a pretty disturbing, dark, strange film directed by Juras Herz, Czechoslovakia in 1968. Basically about the Nazi occupation of Czechoslovakia and the kind of lure of power and fascism as this character, who, strangely enough, is a cremator, gets more and more into this fantasy world. But again, you can watch my random review of it. It is amazingly edited, which is probably one of the things I forgot to mention in the random review. It's really amazingly edited. Again, it's almost to the levels of Last Year at Marienbad, where a character will turn and they're in a completely different room. Again, it's not perfect, but it's almost getting to that point. It's really dark, really disturbing. An amazing central performance. Next is Jan Nemec's Diamonds of the Night. This is also Czech from 1964. This is a really simple tale. It's almost silent, of a couple of boys who escape from a train headed to a concentration camp. Again, beautiful black and white cinematography. Again, it's a disorientating film. It's dark and depressing. That's strangely enough, all these seem to be a little bit dark and depressing. That's just coincidence. Again, wonderful images. There's nods to some of his favourite filmmakers, like Bresson and Buñuel. Yeah, it's a wonderful little film. Again, under 70 minutes, I think. It messes about with time and flashbacks and the use of sound design. It's a really wonderful little film. Next is, I think, possibly the second run Blu-ray that I got. This is all because of Daisuke Beppu. Go check out his channel if you haven't already. One of the greatest channels on YouTube. It's Kazuhara's The Emperor's Naked Army Marches On, which again I've done a random review on, and random is what sums this up. Again, I didn't actually mention the extras in the last two, but they do have good extras. This one's got a new interview with Kazuhara. It has a 2018 Open City Documentary Festival conversation with him, as a 20-page booklet with Tony Raines, or including with Tony Raines. This is from 1987, Japan, and it's just one of the most jaw-dropping, not only documentaries but just films in general, you'll ever see. It's kind of the only comparable one I would say is probably The Act of Killing by Joshua Oppenheimer. It came out in the 21st century. It's a film that you think, oh, why am I watching this? Should I be watching this? Should the filmmaker have done this? Should the filmmaker intervene? I'm not going to go into too much detail of it. You should really just go in blind to it. It's about an ex-soldier who's in World War II, came back from the war, and has things that he's upset with the Emperor with, and goes about in his little van and a megaphone telling people this, and then he kind of focuses on officers and soldiers he served with to get to the bottom of the truth, or a truth, about certain events that happened during the end of World War II. That's as far as I'm going to say. It is just a strange, troubling film about the nature of truth, whether he's telling the truth, whether anybody's telling the truth, whether the characters are real, exactly what the hell is going on. again, should the filmmaker be doing it? Should the filmmaker be intervening in certain things that happen during the filming? You keep thinking it can't get any stranger, it can't get any weirder, and then it does. It's an amazing film. I put it in my favourite 150 list, just because it's so strange and so weird. Yeah, The Emperor's Naked Army marches on. It's one of the essential second run releases, I would say. Very bizarre. Now for something completely different. The Fabulous Baron Munchausen by Carol Zeman. Carol Zeman is the Czech. This is from 1961. The Czech Ray Harryhausen, almost, as far as just being legendary with animation. There's different animation styles. He doesn't do stop motion. Amongst the things he uses is stop motion, but live action and animation and drawings and just models, puppets. Forget Terry Gilliam's version of Baron Munchausen. This is the definitive. You can see the influence in his work and Gilliam's work and Jan Swijemaker's work, Tim Burton, and Wes Anderson, as the back of the box says. This one has the 2015 102-minute documentary on Carol Zeman, which is wonderful. There's a new appreciation by Michael Brook. There's featurettes, Birth of a Film Legend, Zeman in the World, Why Zeman Made the Film, and Zeman's Special Effects, and a 16-page booklet. This is probably my favourite one of the Zemans that second run have released. It's just magical, jaw-dropping, just absolutely beautiful. Again, I don't know whether if you're of a younger age, like Harryhausen and Zeman might not have the same appeal, but there's just a magic, the amount of work that went into them, rather than just, you know, doing stuff in CGI, which yes takes work and takes time, but when you're hand painting stuff and you're hand drawing stuff and hand animating stuff, it's just, there's a discipline and a passion and a dedication that just goes above and beyond normal lengths. Next is I Carry XB1 by Jindřich Polak. This is from Czechoslovakia, 1963. Based on a novel by Stanislav Lem. It's influential. It's kind of odd, full of existential dread. There's a film appreciation by Kim Newman. There's a short film, The Most Ordinary of Occupations, from 1963. There's A Voyage to the End of the Universe, because that was a US release of it, which had all the political and angst stuff cut out. There's nods to Forbidden Planet with Robbie the Robot. Nazrin Broad did a really good review of it, which is much better than how I would describe it. It's a really nuts and bolts science fiction film, but it's kind of wonderful. There's lovely little touches, there's wonderful comments about pretty much the decadent West. It's just a great wee film, and I'd highly recommend it. Again, lovely black and white cinematography, and again the restorations in these second run releases are really excellent. Next is another Zeman, Invention for Destruction, which is based on the Jules Verne book Master of the World, I believe. This is from 1958. This has The Fabulous World of Jules Verne, which is the alternate English dubbed version of the film, is an appreciation by John Stevenson, the director of Kung Fu Panda. There's two of Zayman's shorts, Inspiration from 1948 and King Larva from 1950, and there's featurettes why Zayman made the film, Zayman special effects, and obviously the booklet. This is another beautiful little film. The mixture of animation styles, just the love and craft that goes into these films, it's just wonderful. Next is the third Carol Zayman that I have. That's Journey to the Beginning of Time. This is from 1955. Again, it's Czech. This is in colour. This is again a really simple but really effective little film. Again, there's an English dubbed version. There's a new appreciation by John Stevenson, again, the director of Kung Fu Panda. The making of Journey to the Beginning of Time, Restoring the World of Fantasy featurette, and again, the booklet. This is just about boys who go down the river back into the Jurassic period. It's literally that simple. There's no explanation for it. There's no, magic machine that does it. It's just simple and effective and quite wondrous. For me, it's not quite as good as the other two, but it's still a wonderful little film and a wonderful experience. Next up is Shop on the High Street by Jan Kadar and Elmar Kloss. This actually won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film in 1965. This is Czech, Slovak, probably more. I was going to do a random review on this because it's a really powerful, moving film, but I thought just after doing The Cremator, people might think I just like miserable films or depressing films. This is set in Slovakia in 1942. Again, the Nazis have started shipping Jews out to the concentration camps, and this is kind of a wonderful example of just the kind of insidious anti-Semitism that went on. So there's only like one swastika that you see, or one guy wearing a swastika. The kind of gathering up of the Jews and the kind of starting of that is actually by I'm probably going to pronounce it wrongly, the Hlinka Guard of Slovakia, who the SS would later give training to. So it's not swastikas you see, it's a kind of double cross emblem that they wear, and that's for the Hlinka Guard. I'm probably pronouncing that wrongly. So they start by giving non-Jews, or Aryans as they call them, they kind of take over the Jew's shop, or they become the guardian of the Jew's shop, or slowly take it over. So you have this carpenter who's pretty poor, even though his wife wants to better herself and her family. His brother-in-law is the leader of the guard, and his wife's kind of jealous of her sister who's married to the leader of the guard, whereas the carpenter's not really that bothered about money or whatever, but the brother-in-law does him a favour and makes him the kind of Aryan guardian of this old Jewish lady's haberdashery. He kind of forms a bond with her, and then slowly, it's a 2-hour film, it's actually takes a wee while to get going, because again you just get to know the characters, and then people start turning on people. You can kind of see his wife says, you know, oh, where's she keeping all her gold? You know, you haven't ripped up the floorboards and dug into the walls, that's where she'll have all her gold. It's all these kind of stereotypes about Jewish people, that kind of, there are neighbours, but there's just gentle kind of nods to we don't trust them, and as it builds to the climax when they're actually pretty much all herded into the town centre and shipped off on trains to the concentration camps, and of course the Hiblinka guard, his brother-in-law, is like, you know, it's just work camps, you know, the old people will be returned home, you'll be back in the autumn. It's just how, again, some people get a little bit of power, so they obviously that goes to their head, because as you may have heard, power corrupts. But he obviously grows fond of this woman and doesn't want her to go. People start disappearing. It's just, again, it's another kind of beautiful, horrible film. You know, it starts off, the first kind of half's actually got a lot of humour to it. You know, it does have great performances. Again, black and white cinematography is wonderful. This has an appreciation by Michael Brook, 20-page booklet. So it's not a ton of extras in this one, but it is one of those films that's quite wonderful, even though it's obviously quite horrible. But again, it's so subtle. You know, from this carpenter's perspective, he talks to the Jewish barber who's about to get rounded up as well, and it's like he's going, oh, I don't know why it's happened all of a sudden, and the barber's going, this isn't sudden, you know, this is you can see it happening, but obviously the non-Jewish people aren't really paying any attention to what's actually going on. Yeah, it's a wonderful film that I would recommend. I just didn't want to do another random review straight after The Cremator, just to depress everybody completely. But that's another essential second run release, I would say. And next is Silence and Cry by Milos Shanko. Again, apologies for the Hungarian pronunciation. This is Hungarian, strangely enough, from 1968. This is probably my least favourite of my second run Blu-rays. It's a good film. This is the third part, the final part of his trilogy, The Roundup in the Red and White, which I have on second run DVD backlog, which I still haven't watched. This has his 3 short films, Presents 1, 2 and 3. And just the booklet, so again the extras in this one aren't that great. I just didn't really connect with this one as much as the other ones. This is essentially about post World War One in the countryside, and the army is still kind of trying to pick up stragglers from the war. So there's a guy hiding out on a farm, and there's lots of long takes, there's lots of people just wandering around, running, then stopping, then crossing over, and there's kind of 2 men, 2 women, and a couple of soldiers who are kind of the main characters, and they just kind of walk around. They pretty much just walk around the countryside. It's a good film, but again, I didn't find it that engaging. You can let me know in the comments below what I'm missing, but I just thought it was an okay film. Fortunately, it's under 80 minutes. If it was like 2 hours, it would almost be unwatchable, I think, for me. But it's an interesting film. Again, it's about having power, the abuse of power, getting people to do anything you want, pretty much. You know, the soldiers knock down family homes as a punishment just for the suspicion of hiding somebody. Again, it's beautifully shot. There's wonderful landscapes. There is a kind of dance that happens with the characters as they continually cross each other, camera wise. You don't actually really notice the long takes unless you actually sit down and watch it again, which I will do at some point. But I just wasn't really connected to the characters that much in comparison to the other films I've discussed, and I just didn't find it that engaging. But again, let me know in the comments below what you think of Silence and Cry, whether I'm just getting it all wrong. And finally, a film that blew me away, but I don't know why, and I did a random review on it as well. It's Vampire Kwadachuk by Per Portabella. Again, you can go check out my random review of it, because it is an amazing film. Portabella pretty much asked to film on the set of Jez Franco's Count Dracula in 1970, but he didn't want to use the actor's sound because he wanted to make it as cheap as possible. So it's a silent film on out of stock black and white film. He uses an avant-garde composer. At one point there's a pneumatic drill on the soundtrack. There's just noise. There's some music for large stretches that's silent. He shows you the artifice of filmmaking, but then you're still drawn into the story. You don't know why it actually works. It shouldn't work, but it kind of does. It's a perplexing film. Again, this is another short one as well. Again, I think if it was like 2 hours long, it would be a bit much. It's one of the most unique and strangely I think one of the best versions of Count Dracula. It's Christopher Lee as Dracula. He shows the actors before scenes, after scenes, in makeup, out of makeup. Actors wink at the camera. The death of Dracula is never seen, but there's a unique way that he deals with the death of Dracula that's actually one of the best Dracula deaths in cinema history. Again, even though it shouldn't be. It is a head-scratching film. You may have the reaction of, this is the worst film I've ever seen, this is one of the best films I've ever seen, or what the hell's going on. You may have all three reactions at the one time. It's just a fascinating little film, but again, you can let me know in the comments below what you think of Vampire Kwadachuk, because I'd be fascinated if somebody explained it to me. So thanks so much for watching. That is my second run Blu-ray backlog cleared, slowly but surely. Like I said, the second run DVD backlog is going to take a bit longer. Yeah, some interesting, strange, odd films came out of Czechoslovakia and Hungary in the 60s and 70s. And second run do a wonderful job on restoring these and finding people to talk about them and getting the short films. They are really an underrated label that no doubt we'll be hearing a lot more of in the future. So thanks so much for watching. Again, please let me know your favourite second run release and which second run releases you would recommend on Blu-ray that I don't have, so I can create another backlog. And this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying thanks very much and farewell.